Hi, this is Greg Eva, and we're back for part 3 of the new ThingWorx and Azure Industrial IoT integration using OPC UA. And in this part, we're going to be talking about the connection to other OPC UA servers other than Kepware. We're going to continue from where we left off in part 2, where we looked at the overall infrastructure with all the different components with Azure IoT Edge and Azure Industrial IoT in the cloud and using this in ThingWorx. And we're going to add another system over here. We're going to add another Ubuntu server 1804 with Azure IoT Edge, and this is going to be communicating with the ThingWorx Kepware Edge, which is the Linux version of a particular Linux version of Kepware covering a few drivers, and it's got a simulator driver that we're also going to be using. And another one, we've got FactoryTalk Linx Gateway on a Windows server running on the same network. So these two are essentially running on a separate network over here on an internal network than this one is. So we can imagine that this is a different part of a plant or even two separate plants. And here we're going to have two OPC UA servers that are leveraging the same Azure IoT Edge as well as two separate OPC UA servers. So let's get into it. Okay, so starting with the IoT Edge on this Linux system, I've just gone through the installation. So this thing should have everything installed, so we don't have to go through this together. It's quite simple. I just did a Google search for install Azure IoT Edge on Linux, and we see we've got some instructions here. And there's really only a couple of parts to this. First of all is register the Microsoft's GPG key, as well as add the software repository to our APT source lists. And we see for Ubuntu Server 1804, which is what I'm using, we've got this command. So there's one command here, there's another command here, one here, and then basically we just update everything, install the Moby engine. Once the Moby engine is installed, which is managing the containers, we just have to install IoT Edge down here. So it's really simple. From there, we just need to go in and change the configuration. We're going to do a manual provision to point the configuration to our own IoT hub, as you can see here. So let's do that now. Go over to our IoT hub. We're going to create a new IoT Edge device. But first what I'm going to do is, in order for the layered deployment to take place and implement all these modules down at the edge, I'm going to go in and I'm going to copy this from our other gateway device before we create a new one. And here, let's go ahead and call this OPC UA Factory IoT Edge. Okay, so the device is created. Save that. We get an iterated version. And now we're going to take the primary connection string here. And let's just go add this into our configuration file. Okay, so now that that has been added, I'm just going to restart the IoT Edge service so that it picks up that change. Okay, so it's already started to create some Edge modules. Specifically starting with the agent. Okay, so it's going to take a couple minutes for the modules to get deployed and for it to finish doing what it needs to do to get this all set up. While it's working on that, let's go and have a look at our FactoryTalk platform here. I've got a cookie factory running and using an emulated SoftLogix controller that's managing the cookie factory here. And so we're going to use this as a bit of a data source to grab some values from FactoryTalk's Linx Information Gateway in order to try and bring it in through this OPC UA mechanism up through Azure IoT into ThingWorx. So the first thing I wanted to do is just have a quick peek in FactoryTalk Live Data Test Client to make a connection to the PLC. So the PLC is running up here. And we do have a connection, we are getting data there. And so from there, because we obviously want to access this from outside this PC, I want to make sure that Linx Gateway is configured properly. So we're going to open this up and just have a look at the configuration for FactoryTalk's Linx Gateway. And we see that the UA server is enabled and running. And if we come down to UA server endpoints, we see similar configuration options for OPC UA as we saw in Kepware and the Windows version of Kepware, as well as what we're going to see in the Linux version, despite the look and feel being different. So this has an application name, FactoryTalk's Linx Gateway, which is going to show up in the URL or the URI. Our port is here 4990 as opposed to the 49320 that we saw previously. And just for demo purposes, you can see here that the security has been set to none, so there's no authentication and no encryption and anonymous access. So obviously this is just for demo purposes, but because it's set up like that, I'm just going to leave it like this to just give us a plethora of different connectivity options. So let's shut that down. And the other thing, we've already seen this in the Kepware side of things, but I do want to make sure that we have an appropriate endpoint that has been opened and bound by the gateway server. So once again, I'm going to use the TCP view program just as a quick way to do that. I'm going to turn off the resolved addresses. I don't really want to see them resolved, I just want to see the numbers. And this way I can sort by the local port column over here normally. And we saw that it was 4990, so I should be able to come down here and find the 4990. And yep, I see FactoryTalk's Linx Gateway has 4990 bound in a couple of places actually. One specifically on this endpoint, the 4411, as well as just generally on any address. So we, okay, so this is actually an established connection to another system. We're going to have a look at that system in a second. So that looks all good. Let's just remember, obviously, the firewall, we're not going to go and look at that, but obviously we need to have that 4990 firewall port open in order for us to be able to communicate. And in order to check that communication, let's use our OPC UA client. And here I've already connected to this. So I'm just going to put the address in here, OPC TCP, and put the address 4411 4990. And I have none and none and anonymous, like the settings that we had in the server. And if I go ahead and make that connection, we should see we got a green checkbox. Check here, we are connected, and I've already actually got some values that are being monitored. So we should be able to see those in here. And yeah, now we actually should have that connection also. This established showing us here, and we can also even see connection statistics as far as what's coming in there. So that's excellent. We've got the OPC UA confirmed over to our FactoryTalk Linx Information Gateway. So because the IoT Edge is running on this machine here, we should be okay to communicate there as well. Let's do the same on this particular machine. And I'm going to connect to my local system here, which is ThingWorx Kepware Edge, and the IP of this server is 44.128. And here we can see, we'll just grab some test data here. Okay, and we see the sine waves coming in. We've got data, we're good, we're connected up to the local Kepware. So what's next? We should be in pretty good shape. Why don't we go back and check on our deployment here. When I do a Docker PS, we do have all of the modules, Edge Hub, Twin, Discovery, Publisher, and Edge Agent that are reporting as present. We'll check their logs just to see what they say. Twin looks good. That doesn't look good, but I think that's a residue of when I had this running before. Discovery looks good and connected. And Edge Agent. Edge Agent looks perfect. Okay. Okay, so it's literally just finishing up, I think, getting these everything provisioned and connected. So let's just go have a look at it in the IoT Hub here, if we refresh everything. So yes, everything is operational here, and we should be good to go on to the next step. We did see that we had the KEP server connection set up over here, but it didn't really talk too much about that. So let's just quickly have a look. If we look at the Kepware Edge Quick Start Guide, there's a section in here that talks about at the end of the Quick Start Guide using UA Expert. And because we don't have the graphical user interface like we do with KEPServerEX or ThingWorx Kepware Server, it's quite important to note here that the port that is going to be used by the OPC UA server is 49330 by default, and we're using basic 256 SHA-256 for security and authentication, and and the interface is enabled by default. So this is different than on Kepware. But we do also need to create a user group with read-write browse access. So you could do a similar thing here by going and enabling anonymous access, which we can have a quick look at here in my Postman collection. So this is a little Postman collection that I've created. It essentially uses the config API to do various things. And here you can see the response of this, the config API version project command. And this is just bringing back the interface status here, and we can see that the OPC enabled is true, diagnostics false, UA anonymous login is false. So if we were to do a put command instead of a get command and fill in all these variables, I'm using the environment feature of Postman to essentially populate these variables at execution. Basically, it just allows us to, I've got these defined as true or false, if always on is enabled, if OPC UA is enabled, if anonymous is okay. And we can just submit this to essentially update to enable the anonymous login if we so desire. Coming back over to here, we are going to look at alternative ways of doing this. So we did just look at no security. We previously looked at just authentication and encryption. So here we're going to look at having a user as well as authentication and encryption. So as you can see here, the guide outlines how we can set up a user group and how we can set up a user, as well as a password. And then we're going to use this in ThingWorx in order to get connected. Okay, so in ThingWorx, you can see here that I've just put in this discovery URL, and technically this should work because of the fact that it's on the same network. It's actually on the same machine as the IoT Edge. So this Ubuntu 18.04 name should resolve appropriately. However, what I noticed is that it's not resolving appropriately. It's actually resolving to a loopback address, this 127.0.1.1. And I don't really know why this isn't working with the IoT Edge, because it is working to connect to that endpoint using the Process UA client. But in any case, because it's not working, I'm just going to put in the IP address here, so that we're very specific. This is the IP address that we want to talk to. This is the port, and let's add the application. So this is our Kepware Edge, and I'm going to do the same thing for our FactoryTalk Linx Gateway. FactoryTalk Linx Gateway is a little bit different, with the name being wrong, is that there's no name services on this particular subnet. So basically it's not really possible for the Linux system to understand the name that I had put in here. Could eventually be picked up in the discovery, but in any case I'm just going to be very prescriptive and put the IP addresses in here as well as the ports. Okay, so I've just added the two applications, or the two discovery URLs that should be queried about, and just for fun, let's go down to the IoT Edge and have a look at discovery to see what it's doing. Yeah, okay, so here you can see that the two discovery operations that just happened, that I instigated, and we would have seen those strange resolutions had I not done that. We do see some strangeness here. Error received from remote host, bad service unsupported. 4849. Okay, but we did find the servers and we did update them. So one thing that there is to keep in mind here is that we do have security enabled on the Kepware server, and we haven't done anything yet with certificates. So we're going to have a look at those certificates, and you can see I'm in the ThingWorx Kepware Edge folder here. So if I do edge admin, manage trust store, UA server just, okay, that's it. So you can see that there's been an initial attempt by discovery to make the connection to the Kepware Edge. And there has been an exchange of a certificate, but it was rejected. So let's undo this rejection and accept it. I believe the command is trust. I'm just going to copy this in here and paste that over here. And now they're showing both as trusted, so that's perfect. And now maybe if we're lucky, we'll even go back into discovery and so it probably won't retry right away, but it will eventually retry and should be in good shape with that. Something else to note about these certificates is it seems that there might be multiple certificates that are used by Azure IoT because I have seen 2 certificates. So we are going to come back in here later after we try to publish some things just to make sure that the publisher and the discovery components are in fact either using the same certificate or both of those certificates are trusted. Okay, so let's come back to ThingWorx here now and have a look, and we do have those 2 additional applications that are registered and that are showing up here. And we can see the actual names that are coming from those endpoints. And what do we say in here? So both of them, as is normal, they start deactivated and disconnected. This one with no security is the FactoryTalk Linx Gateway. We can see the authentication mechanisms and security modes as none and none. And then this other one is sign and encrypt and username. So I did leave the anonymous off, so we do need to have a username. And how the username works is actually using this endpoint registration ID, so this UAT20A86C. And it's going to essentially look up in the security configuration list. I've actually already pre-populated this, but all you need to do is fill in the endpoint ID over here, put in the username and put in the password. And what's going to happen is when it tries to make that connection, if there's an authentication method of username and there's an entry over here in this particular security configuration table, then it's going to use those credentials to try and make that connection. So let's go ahead and activate these 2 endpoints. And now this should be coming back. This takes a moment. Refresh does say that they're activated, but both still disconnected. Let's come back down to this guy here. You know what? We'll even do check the trust store. So there's no new certificates in here just yet. Discovery, nothing new going on the discovery. We should see some entries in the twin log because the twin is really what's doing this job here that we have. And what does it tell us? Creating session 44.128. 44.11, changed from connecting to ready. So even if we had to refresh this yet, we might not see this just yet in ThingWorx. We can try, yeah, okay, we do. So we are seeing a ready and an unauthorized. So activated and connected. So we do have connections to both of the servers, but one of them is unauthorized. And if we look at this twin log again, we see that it's gone from not reachable to unauthorized, which is quite handy to know. Question is why, obviously, and I've got a hunch that it's because of this certificate. Maybe not. Unauthorized. We're going to restart it, just for good measure. We're going to see if another certificate comes through. In the meanwhile, we'll go have a look at the ThingWorx setup for this FactoryTalk Linx Gateway. So because it's activated and connected in it and in a ready state, now if I come over here to industrial connections, I'm going to see this, I guess it's this one, 73B0C7. And here we'll just put in here FactoryTalk Linx Gateway. And we can come over to the Discover tab. That might be the wrong one. So we'll come back here to check this out. And what do we have? This one, right? UAS 797 is the application ID. Registration ID is UAT73B0. Okay, so that is the right one. Okay, so I guess the browsing, due to the fact that we just restarted the IoT Edge, it just took a second. So now the browsing is up, and we can see we've got this FactoryTalk Linx folder here. We're going to browse down, and we're going to go for something in the data, line 1, cookie factory here. And you know, I'm just going to kind of pick some stuff. Okay, so I got 4 tags there. Bind those to a remote thing. Okay, so that might not be so interesting. It's just a yeah, that was the coordinate that I grabbed. Save that. Okay, so save successful. It should be making those subscriptions down to the Edge. Let's just have a quick look. So it's the publisher module that handles the subscriptions. And what is it telling us? Okay, so you can see here for the server, it's created this device data writer set. It's made the subscriptions, and it's added the 4 items. So now it's set to monitoring these 4 items and that particular subscription. So if we come back up to ThingWorx, I don't have VS Code open. We could see the values coming into VS Code, but we see that we've populated values and they're coming in. So if we want to have a look kind of at the other way around, I'm not so hopeful that we'll be able to find what those tags do on here. But why don't we try to just bring up the OPC UA client over here, and we can add X and Y. Let's put some numbers in there. Okay. Okay, a little bit confusing as to why that is not reporting. Let's have another look at the publisher log. What's nice in the publisher log here too is that it's showing us the two endpoints that we have configured here, and it's giving us some overall statistics about how the messages are, the frequency of the messages and how they're being batched up. Okay. And let's move on to the IoT Edge Kepware. We did see some twin error messages here. Okay, so now it's changed to unreachable. That's not ideal. I actually meant to restart both of them at the same time, but I didn't. So we'll restart that, and actually what we'll probably do, just to go a little bit faster, is we can probably docker kill publisher. If this works, it might respawn it. Sudo. It should see that it's gone and respawn it. Okay. So I think we're good. I think we got those 4 from the FactoryTalk Linx Gateway, and then the 5 from the Kepware Edge. It's not entirely clear to me why we had to restart this. Let's just have a look at our certificates. Our certificates are okay, everything's trusted, and if we go back to ThingWorx, And we have a look here. It still says it's not reachable, but we obviously saw some different messages. I guess actually it was the publisher that I killed, not the twin. Right, so it's the twin that's having an issue here. So Netcat can open that port, no problem. Okay, and we're connected here. This guy's really having a difficulty. So I'm going to give something a try here. I do need to update the project ID often when it changes. So we're just going to go into the environment, change the project ID. And I forgot I wanted to turn on the anonymous access. Okay, so that should have worked. Okay, so we do have anonymous access enabled now. Okay, so something worth noting here is that here's two certificate rejections. It doesn't like the fact that this FactoryTalk server doesn't have the right name, and it doesn't know about this. It's supposed to be coming from this machine called FTIS-base, and it's really called FTIS-core. And it doesn't have this loaded. There's no fingerprint in IoT Edge, obviously, for this. And the same holds true for Kepware, doing a similar thing on the certificate. But this isn't really stopping us. This should not stop the connection from going through. And it says, error received from remote hosts, error occurred verifying security. Retry. Okay. So it's gone from connecting to no trust, and let's just have a look at this. So the other one is connecting to ready, and let's have a look again at our trust store. Yeah. So I did see this before, and I can't really say that I understand it, but basically by putting the anonymous OPC access endpoint to true, it's actually enabled it to go further in its connection, and it's actually exchanged this new certificate. So let's go ahead and trust this new certificate. Okay, so now that we've trusted that new certificate, we'll do the same thing. Restart the twin. Okay, so we are establishing an unencrypted connection to FactoryTalk Linx Gateway, sorry. And look at that. Okay, so right away it's established this connection to the Kepware one as well. Okay, so now if we look at the publisher, okay, we don't have anything very exciting. Let's come back to ThingWorx. There we go. And we've got everything activated and ready. So there does seem to be some little things to be conscious of here in this whole process. You know, if I kind of recap some of the things that I saw, using the name Ubuntu 1804 didn't necessarily resolve locally to the right address. There was also this notion of who has what security, the certificates being exchanged, 1 or 2, what causes the kind of kickoff process for those to happen. So, you know, as we've just gone through together, the logs in Docker are very relevant and very useful in troubleshooting all this. I haven't really been using VS Code Monitor here, which is also very helpful, but just, you know, looking at the IoT Edge logs has really been what has helped me get through these types of challenges. So now we should be able to go start talking with that IoT Edge. FactoryTalk Linx Gateway. So here's the other one that we haven't connected yet. And now we have ThingWorx Kepware Edge. Whew. Let's save that and discover. Okay, now we're browsing. We are browsing Kepware, and we go in channel 1, device 1. This is essentially the base simulation program that we saw elsewhere. We'll just take a couple values here. And let's take one of the text ones, one of the user ones. So this is TKE. Let's just call it TKE. Let's save it. Okay, so that's what, 4 tags. It is saved. Let's quickly come down here and see what publisher is saying. Or maybe twin. Yeah, so publisher is saying, okay, we got these 4 new tags. We've added them to the subscription. And if we come back up to ThingWorx, I mean, we should be seeing some values. So there you have it. A little bit of a longer than anticipated demo. I didn't intend to get into troubleshooting along the way, but frankly, this has been good, I think, because it's a good example of some of the challenges that I've come across along the way. There are a lot of different components in here. You know, when we look at this type of distributed architecture, just between things like firewall ports, different OPC UA ports, there's 3 different OPC UA servers that are here, and a lot of different components across the IoT Edge. So I hope that you found this valuable, and please feel free to leave some comments or ask questions in the comments.